Okay, now I'm going to go into setting up your tune, selecting the power curve, and and putting in your boost turbo settings. So you'll go to your settings, you'll go to throttle tab on the side. Okay, so initially we're set on curve 1. There's 10 different curves. The higher the number, the more aggressive. Now, what everybody has to do is, and it's the one thing I can't do for everybody, is setting your start power and the first couple dots, which basically equates to about your first 6 feet of the run. Every car is different, gearing, weight, the amount of traction you have. That's something that everybody has to fine tune on their own. And I'm going to kind of give you some tips to, what you're looking to get. But I just want to show you how you actually change that first. So to change the launch, and basically when I say launch, I mean the first, 6 feet. You'll go in and set your start power first. So the start power is the initial amount of power that's applied to the motor as soon as the controller tells the car to go. It hits it with a certain amount of power. That is your start power. It lasts for about 1/10 of a second from what I can tell from my testing. The start power lasts about 1/10 of a second, and then it switches over to wherever your radio is at and wherever that equates to in the power curve here. So, if it lasts 1/10 of a second and then your radio's at 15% power, then it's going to give it however much power is set in the curve here. So, like I say, the first thing you'll set is the start power. My guideline for that is most likely you're going to be somewhere between 5% and 25%. I doubt that you'll successfully be able to go above 25% because typically it wants to do what we've termed overload. And I'll show you on a graph what that looks like and kind of describe it to you, but it's definitely what you don't want to be doing is overloading the ESC. So basically, to change the start power is real easy. You can just click this over here and you can scroll and find whatever number you want. Click OK. So now to change the dots in the power curve, which is the next part that you have to basically change, you'll click on the power curve box itself in the corner and it brings up this. You'll click up here at the top, the over button, and that'll change you from one dot to the next. Now, default, it won't show. I'll just show you again. When you click on this, up here on the X and Y, it says 100, 100, even though you're on this dot in the corner. That's actually not accurate. So to change and just get that to change, you just hit over to the right at the top and then back over to the left. So over to the right and then back over to the left, and then you can see where it's really at. So your first dot, where the X coordinate is 0%, that should match your start power number. So if you set your start power number at 8 like we have it, then the Y should be at 8%. If you move the start power to 20, then the Y would change to 20. So you'll change that dot, and then typically you'll only have to change this next dot. The next dot is your 10% X dot. And this here, I would say to run between 4 and 6% more than your start power and you can play around with it and maybe something will work better for you. But from what I've seen, 4 to 6% works pretty good. Maybe 8% more, but you definitely want to run a little bit more in this second dot than what your start power is. And then you can go over to your third dot, which is the 20%. Now, you probably won't really have to change this one much, because if the car, as the tunes get more aggressive, this number goes up. So, you might have to fine tune that of maybe 2 or 3%, but you shouldn't have to change it much. And then the next dot, which is the fourth dot over, the 30% dot on the x-axis, that right there is 6 feet. So from this line over here to where that dot is, that's about 6 feet on the track. And that's your power coming into the motor for the first 6 feet of the run. So all these dots, you could maybe fine tune. Like I say, the main thing that I've seen is playing around with the start power and the first 2 dots to get a nice smooth power coming into the motor. And maybe one other thing I should describe on here is this x-axis refers to where your radio is at. So as we use the M17 or the Futaba to ramp power in to basically you're ramping your throttle in, where the throttle's at on the radio is the x-axis. The y-axis refers to the amount of power the ESC's put into the motor, just so everybody understands that. So, like I say, that's all the fine-tuning you really need to do in there. And once you get it set, you'll hit the OK button and you'll hit the save button, and it'll save. Now, I'm going to show you where I'm going to show you some data logs and show you what you're looking for when I talk about overloading. Overloading and we still don't even have a full understanding of what causes it. There's a lot of variables, but what I can say is the heavier your car is, it can overload a little easier. The more traction you have is definitely probably the biggest determining factor, but also just how you're putting the power into the motor. Gearing can also affect it too. Basically, anytime you're affecting the load on the motor. So traction, weight, gearing is all affecting the load on your motor. So that's where you would want to, you just have to fine tune this and get it right. Dropping a pinion down can help where it won't overload. But that's more of a Band-Aid, I would say. More than likely, if your gearing's in the right range, which where we're typically running, I would suggest for people starting out, you want to have between a 13.5 and a 12.7 final drive ratio to start out with. That's a fairly safe area. And basically, when you start in that range, you might be able to max it out, and the mile an hour might be a little lower. You might not get as much mile an hour. A lot of times you'll get a really good, your first 33 feet will be really strong, even if it does max the mile an hour out and you don't get a super high mile an hour, but it's just safer and it's easier on stuff. So that's a good place for people to start, I would say. Like I said, between, 13.5 to 12.7, 13.3 seems to be a good final drive ratio. So next, I'm going to go ahead and show you what overloading looks like on a data log. So right here, what we're looking at is a data log of a run. Obviously, once you see the current start going up, that's power getting applied to the motor at this spot right here. Your RPM line is the pink line. Now this is a real nice log. This log right here, you can see the RPMs are just super smooth coming in. It might be a little bit soft, it might be a little slow, but at the same time, it's just smooth. There's no overloading, and it's going to result in a good ET. So that's what you're really looking to get. Now in the next one, you can see the current's pulling a little bit harder here. And anytime your current is going more upward than your RPMs, you're working the motor harder. If your current just kind of follows the RPM line and parallels it, you're not making the motor work hard. But now as far as this overloading here, so on this one you can see the current or the RPMs, it kind of has a little bump up in it on the launch. The little bump ain't bad. This isn't like horrible or anything like that. And this could be real fast on the track. So this isn't anything to be like concerned about, I would say. This is kind of normal and this is safe still. Now we have another log here. Now you can see this big jump. And a lot of people would look at this and think that it's spinning the tires, but that's not spinning the tires. If you watch the car going down the track, it'll be slow and then it comes on really hard like a light switch. It'll be slow for the first few feet, maybe the first 8 feet, and then it comes on like a light switch. This representation of RPM is not really what the motor's doing or what the car's doing. It's basically, and when we call it overloading, it is basically the ESC is losing phase of where the motor's actually at. And that's what you don't want. So something like this, you definitely want to get away from. That's not going to be good. And you'll probably be able to see this on the track. The car kind of crawl out of the hole and then come on real hard. So next, this one's a real bad. Like we're just getting even worse. Straight current all the way up. And the RPMs just jump up and hold this big hump here. And yeah, the car would have been just crawling along. And this one here, it went pretty far where it didn't go anywhere. So this is bad. You don't want to keep doing this. This is how you'll burn an ESC up. So that's definitely what you want to stay away from. And then so that's basically, showing the difference here. From a smooth start to this right here, which is just complete overloading. That'll kind of show you what you got to tune for, and that's where you tune the start power. You tune your first few dots to get the power to come in, the right amount of power to come in smoothly, and you won't have this. So back to here. So the next thing that can also kind of help you as far as overloading is tuning the motor frequency. All of them are going to be set at 32K. Some motors might like to be ran lower, between 12 and 16 K over here on this number. So this will be the middle setting, motor frequency. You can change this, and you could set it down to like 12K. What it'll do is, what this is basically doing is it's how fast it's pulsing the motor until you get to 100% throttle. So the higher the number, the faster it's pulsing, which is smoother. You're basically getting more throttle resolution. But I've heard, and I've experienced some motors just like, and some tunes, the way the track's set, it might like to be lower, at 12K. And it's just kind of a fine tuning option and to the aggressiveness. And it can help overloading. So that's something to play around with. And as far as also, I just want to show, the different power curves that we have. So, this is a 1 curve. There's a 2 curve. And you can see the ramp as we go up. We're getting to the top of the chart faster, basically, which is 100% throttle. You're essentially getting to 100% throttle faster. And I developed these curves doing track testing. I mean, it's all been tested. and it all works. So, and they get real aggressive where it's damn near straight up and down. So, I don't suggest going to these max curves anytime until you have a real handle and you really, need it. Really, the best place to start, where I suggest everybody starts, is just start with a one curve, and see how that works out. And then work more turbo and more boost in. So I'm going to show that next. So you start with a one curve, you get your start power. I mean, and to adjust the start power, it's not like you have to make full runs. Just make, 20-foot runs and make sure the car's leaving hard and leaving smooth. So now we're going to get over here. And this is the next part of the tuning. You have your power curves to get to 100% throttle, but you also combine that with our boost and turbo settings. So there's going to be 6 boost turbo settings, and you'll set them. This chart's going to come with everything with it. Sadly, the R1 ESC, you can't save different profiles. So this here is a way to have a visual aid to program it in if you want to make a change. So obviously the first thing, the least aggressive thing you can do, is set the boost and turbo off. So this is completely turned off. That's what that screen would look like over here. It's turned off. To turn it on, you'll hit this boost button in the top, or you'll hit the off button, sorry. Where it says off, you hit that. It'll pop up. You're gonna go to throttle. So basically what this means is, as the throttle ramps in from the radio, these numbers on the side, the red numbers indicate your throttle percentage from the radio, or I'm sorry, the black numbers indicate your throttle percentage from the radio. The red number indicates the maximum amount of boost at that number. So basically at 30% throttle here, we got 10 degrees of boost added. And at 40, we get up to 15. So you're ramping it in. This line right here, that indicates how it ramps in. And this is based off throttle percentage from the radio. So your turbo is up here at the top. So you'll set your turbo number. Now, as you can see, we have different turbo boosts. So our next setting, this would be a number 2 setting. Basically, it's turbo only. There's no boost added at all over in these numbers. So it's just a turbo only. And then if we set that, you go back here, you change your turbo slope positive. That's how fast the turbo comes in. So 0 turbo delay. All the tunes are set with 0 turbo delay. The turbo slope positive, it means that like if it's set like this here, it takes 1 second when you get to full throttle to put 32 degrees of turbo in. It ramps it in over 1 second, basically. So, like I say, on this tune number 3 here, we have just a little bit of boost at 80, 90, and 100%. And then we have 40 degrees of turbo, and the turbo slope positive is 0.6 of a second. So it ramps it in over 0.6. Then we get to the more serious stuff on the back side here. This will be a setting number 4. You have a decently aggressive amount of boost coming in. 45 degrees of turbo, ramped in 0.45 seconds. So basically, that right there. And one thing I should note is all these tunes, the boost and turbo, the way I build all the 3-turn motors, what that comes out to is that every 3-turn motor is set at 15 degrees when I build them and blueprint them. If you ordered a motor that wasn't blueprinted, it'll have tape on the outside of the can that's marked what your timing is. So everything, all this is based on 15 degrees of actual can timing. If you need to turn it down because your can timing is higher, then you will take numbers out of the boost, and you could basically just take away the boost. Because if you take 5 degrees out of boost from every one of these numbers, you're making up. Like if your motor's at 20, you take 5 degrees out, that'd be the same as if you were at 15. So that's something to keep in mind. Basically, we're trying to keep our total timing, under 105 degrees, 103 to 105 degrees of total timing. That's can timing, plus all the boost at 100% here, plus your turbo. Then also, we've got some more aggressive tunes here. We're getting all the way up to 58 degrees of boost, 32 degrees of turbo, ramped in 0.3. And then the maximum aggressive tune here, getting all the way to 58 degrees of boost at 90% throttle. And a really short turbo slope positive, so dumping 32 degrees in 0.15 seconds. So that's your different, tunes as far as boost turbo go. You would input them in here. So if you click on this boost plus throttle, you can change these numbers. Just click where it is. You get the arrow up and down, and you can just, hold it down or let off, whatever, or tap it to change that number and input it here. Click OK, and then once you're back to this screen, you set your turbo slope positive where it needs to be, and then you can click save, and it'll save it. So that right there pretty much covers all the initial setup as far as that goes. The next thing that I want to show is the data logging real quick and how we set the settings on that. So we're going to go back here at the top to this main screen. My biggest pet peeve is when people send me data logs that aren't scaled right, because they need to be scaled a certain way so it looks like this. So all the lines basically are a size where you can compare them to one another. So to set the scaling for the data log, and you have to do this on every device. You don't have to use this tablet to tune your car. Phones and stuff might be way more efficient way to do it. This tablet's more of a way to get the file to everybody, because that's a challenge if you don't actually just send it through the mail like this. But to set the data log settings on any device, and like I say, every new device you use, you'll have to go in and set this. You'll click here in the corner. There's this little star down here in this bottom corner. Click that, and then you can see all the things that you can change. This is all pertaining to the data log. So first of all, we'll set it to Fahrenheit. This next number is at 10,000 RPM default. That is the biggest one that people miss changing. It's set at 10,000 to start. You got to go to 100,000, which is all the way at the bottom. So you slide it down all the way to the bottom to 100,000. Click OK. The volts, fine. Current, I like to set to 300, which is at the bottom. And capacity, we're not really looking at capacity, but typically I'll set it at 5,000. So you don't have to save anything. There's no save button. You just click back up here in the corner on the app where it says arrow back by app settings, and you're good. So that's how you set the data log. Now, there's no data log stored in this Wi-Fi link, but basically to get a log, you'll click on log after you make a run. And this is something worth mentioning. A lot of people don't realize you have to kind of get the data. The car needs to have the radio on, and it needs to see some current to even arm the data logger to get it going. If you just go up there and don't do a burnout, or don't do much of a burnout and set your car down, you might not even get a log, because it takes a second to turn it on. And if you launch the car and then it's in the process of turning on, you won't get a full log. So what I like to do is blip the throttle a few times before I even get up to the burnout. Do your burnout. I don't recommend doing a crazy long burnout. We're to a point where we're doing super short burnouts, and I can't stress that enough. Just super short burnouts for 1 second, 2 second max, if that's really what it has to be. Then you put the car on the line. Your data logger will be recording. So when you get back to the pits, you connect. You go to your you click on the log. You'll go up here to the down arrow, the download button. That's with the arrow down. So you'll hit that, and it'll download your log. Now, like I said, there's not one saved in here, but if there was, it'll take a second. The blue bar kind of goes across the bottom, loading it. And then you'll see all the lines squiggling around. And basically where you see the current shoot way up, that's going to be where your run's at. So you'll take and do the pinch to zoom, and you'll zoom in on that area specifically, and you can zoom all the way in so your run looks something like that. And once you do that, you'll be able to see what it looks like. And like I say, it'll look something, let's see here. If you get a log that looks something like that, you'll be able to read it and see what your car is doing going down the track. One thing I want to show here, this current line is maybe one of the best features that the R1 ESC has. This current is showing you the load on the motor. If this current line drops off sharp, like how I have it marked with this right here, and the RPMs are continuing upward, it's a pretty much a telltale sign that your car spun right there. So you can look at the throttle percentage. We're at 70% right there. And you'll know that you need to either pull boost out or, maybe go to a different curve, but because you're spinning right here. So that's just one thing I wanted to mention. A lot of times, if you get a log where the current drops off, and maybe this will be a good one to show. Up here, you get these flat spots sometimes. Like the RPMs go up, and then it'll flatten, and then it goes up again. If the current's staying pretty steady and you start getting flat spots, it means there's probably neither not enough throttle percentage in that area, which on this run, we're already at 100%. So you need more timing. So basically on this one, it'd be more turbo, or turn your turbo slope positive downward. To put more timing in it, it'll help the car keep accelerating. Basically, that flat spot just means the car's not pulling hard right there. So anyway, the other thing you can do is obviously save runs. Up here where the 3 lines are, you can click that, and you can either load or save. You can go to save, put a name in, click OK, and you can save a run that way. After you read your log, save your log, or whatever you're going to do, delete the log. And that's the little trash can icon. You want to delete your log every run, so that way you can start over fresh on the next run. So you'll delete the log, tell you it's deleted. So that pretty much covers that. If something's not showing you the line over here, you can click these and it'll turn it on and off, just so you know as well. So the other thing I wanted to say is you can always save all the settings that are in your ESC. Like if you get a good tune, or you have a tune for a certain track and you want to save exactly where you were at, you can go up to the menu, and instead of importing like we imported the tune, you can export the tune. Click it, put a name in for it, click OK. And that'll save everything that you have in the ESC at that time, exactly the way it is. So I think that pretty much covers, setting it all up. Like I say, you got to go through, tune the start power. That's probably the biggest challenge with the 3.0 motors, is just getting that start power right. You don't want the car overloading. If you hold down the trigger for 66 feet with the car crawling, you'll burn an ESC. It's pretty much guaranteed. So That's just the one thing that you got to pay attention to. But it's not like it's like a voodoo to do it. It's pretty easy, just to play with it, and you'll get a feel for it. And like I said, a good place to probably start is probably around 15% start power. And then your first dot, the 0x dot, will be at 15%. And then the second dot, which will be your x-axis 10%, that will be about 20. That'd be a good place to start for everybody and see how it works and make sure it don't overload. Just because now, if you do have an overload, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to turn the power down. I've seen some cars want to overload at a lower percentage than they want to overload at a higher percentage. It's just something you got to play around with and fine tune it. So hopefully all this helps. And from here, it's just a matter of testing. Good testing is important. Blow the track off, prep the tires the same every time, and just try and get good data. And you really don't have to start with full runs. Just going 33 or 66 feet is the best place to start. So, and one other thing, since we're talking about 33 or 66 feet, this is showing you the radio settings. This is for an M17. Where we set an M17 up for this tune is there's no curving in the radio, there's no points in the radio, there's just one screen. Under the throttle settings, you'll set your throttle speed to -96, and you'll set your point at 10 with it set out underneath that. So the point's at 10 out, -96 throttle speed. That's the only setting we do in the radio. If for some reason you can't get down the track at all with the boost turbo turned off and with the radio at -96 and you're on a curve 1 and you can't get down the track and it's just too much power, then I guess you would turn the radio to -97. But really, you shouldn't have to turn it down more than that, not with using sticky prep on the tires and all that. So, but anyway, as far as all these pertain to the x-axis of the log. So basically 6 foot on the track is 32, let's call it 30% on the x-axis. 18 feet's about 40% on the x-axis. 33 feet, we're about 60% on the x-axis. And then when we get to 66 feet, you're at about 85%. So that just kind of, this here's a way to tie in distance going down the track to where you're at on our dot plot, what dot you're at that time. So if you're busting loose at 18 feet or something, you'll know, okay, well, I need to turn it down. I need to use either a curve or manually go in and turn down the dots from 30-40%. So hopefully that, or maybe even pull boost out at that area too. Pulling boost or adding boost is a good way to tune without even touching the curve. So obviously the more boost you put in, the more powerful it's going to be. So I don't usually recommend putting any boost in at 10%, or at 20, I wouldn't go over 5 or 8 at the most. There's no reason to put that kind of boost in at that low of RPM. So hopefully everything helps here, and we'll move on to the next thing.